All right, welcome into the MMQB podcast with Albert Breer, YouTube edition. It's our Tuesday morning edition. We are up live on Periscope now. If you're listening to this on YouTube or on iTunes, in the 11 o'clock hour every Tuesday morning, we're going to be going live on Periscope so we can answer all of your NFL questions coming out of the weekend. Week 10 is now complete. We are moving on to Week 11, and I'm going to start with 5 things off the top of my head for heading into Week 11. And the number one thing is the story that sort of dominated the news over the course of the last 4 or 5 days, and that's Jerry Jones versus the NFL. And I know for a lot of people this isn't the most interesting thing in the world, but I actually think there's a piece of it that can appeal to anyone. And the reason why, this isn't about Ezekiel Elliott. This isn't about the national anthem. This is about power. And this is about how power is intoxicating. This is about how power can influence relationships. This is about how power can influence business. Well, what do I mean? Well, to really get the scope of how we got where we are right now with Jerry Jones and the compensation committee, the 6-man committee that is in charge of negotiating a new contract for Commissioner Roger Goodell, you have to go all the way back to the process in putting a team back in Los Angeles, which was about as high stakes a game as it gets when it comes to the business of the NFL. Okay, now, similarly to how this process, the process of extending the commissioner, is handled, the NFL formed a 6-man committee to handle Los Angeles. On that committee, you had Clark Hunt, the Chiefs owner. You had Robert Kraft, the Patriots owner. You had John Mara, the Giants owner. You had Bob McNair, the Texans owner. You had Jerry Richardson, the Panthers owner. And you had Art Rooney, the Steelers owner. They were put together to make a decision on whether or not the NFL should pursue the project in Carson, which was put together by the Chargers and the Raiders, or they should pursue the project in Inglewood, which was commandeered by Rams owner Stan Kroenke. Somewhere along the line, Jerry Jones hijacked the process. Somewhere along the line, Jerry used his influence and his power to start steering things. And his belief was that the thing that's best for the NFL is to go with the best project, and the best project was the biggest project, and the biggest project was the one in Inglewood run by Kroenke. And so Jerry took a very active role and wound up taking in the process and wound up taking command of the process, okay? So Jerry gets what he wants. The Rams went out. The Rams go to L.A. The Chargers join him there. And then Jerry helped steer the Raiders to Las Vegas. And it'll take years to figure out whether or not that was the right thing. But that's what Jerry did. Okay? So, in May, the owners are looking at the idea of extending Roger Goodell. Jerry once again stands up, and emboldened with all the power that he was able to gather in the LA process, Jerry pushes forward the idea we should extend Roger Goodell's contract. He's one of the leading voices. They then vote 32-0 to authorize the compensation committee to move forward with a deal. And the compensation committee then asked Jerry to come on as an ad hoc member, in essence serving as a voice for the other 26 members, the other 26 owners. And that goes fine. Everything goes good until August 11th, and that's when the Ezekiel Elliott suspension comes down. Now, that's why the other owners are pointing to Zeke as being the reason for Jerry's turn. The reason why Jerry got upset and said that this is about the structure and the incentives and all that different stuff with the deal, right? And Following that, there is friction between the owners over the anthem. And Jerry feels like the anthem is affecting his business, and so he takes a unpopular position on that. So that's where Jerry decides, I need to do something, and tries to hijack that process, the process of extending the commissioner the same way that he hijacked the Los Angeles process. Well, here's the problem. Okay? 5 members of the LA committee are also on the compensation committee. Hunt, Kraft, Mara, McNair, Rooney. Those 5 guys were on the LA committee and are on the compensation committee. And those 5 guys weren't exactly pumped about the way Jerry took over the Los Angeles process, and they weren't going to let him do it again. And so this is about power. And in the past, we've seen owners stand down in these sorts of situations, or we've seen these situations handled quietly. Well, why isn't this one being handled the same way that Deflategate or Bountygate or Bullygate or the domestic violence situation with Greg Hardy and Adrian Peterson and Ray Rice or the ref lockout was? Why isn't it being handled the same way? Well, because the business isn't humming the same way it was. For the first time in a long time, there are questions about where the future of the NFL is going to be from a TV rating standpoint. They're having trouble filling the stadiums. What are the broadcast deals going to look like in 2022? Is it going to be NBC, CBS, Fox, and ESPN again, or is it going to be Netflix and Amazon and Google? There's a lot of uncertainty going forward. What about the future of the sport? So what we're all getting to see now, because there's uneasiness over the way the business model looks and the future of the business, we're getting to see the power struggles that go on within the NFL. This is going public because the business model isn't humming the same way it was before. And so people are uncomfortable, and people are pushing a little harder, and the arguments are a little nastier. And this is about power. It's about Jerry Jones and the power he was able to wield in Los Angeles and in Las Vegas in getting those cities' teams and getting the Rams and the Chargers and the Raiders stadium situation squared away. He's trying to wield it here because he's uncomfortable with the way the commissioners handled the last few months. He's uncomfortable with the fact that he does not have the power that maybe he did 7 or 8 months ago, or at least he thought he had 7 or 8 months ago. And so this is all about power. Okay. Number 2, what the Patriots did on Sunday night was such a great example of their place in the NFL and where they are as a team and where they are versus other teams. And it's not about Tom Brady's 125 passer rating. It's not about the fact that he hit 9 different receivers. It's not about the fact that the defense suddenly looks like it can play. It's not about the special teams blocking a punt, recovering a fumble, and returning a kickoff for a touchdown. It's about everybody else. All right, since 2000, that's when Bill Belichick got there. 233 wins for the Patriots. That is 36 more than the next closest team. The Steelers have 197 over that span. The Patriots, the difference between them and everyone else was on display on Sunday. The Broncos are one of the most stable organizations in the league. And Vance Joseph deserves time. The quarterback mistake isn't an unusual one when you look across the NFL. The fact that they got the wrong guy, or at least it looks like they got the wrong guy in Paxton Lynch, the fact that that problem kind of metastasized, that's not all that unusual. And they'll probably eventually figure it out. It's a good franchise. It's a good organization. Whether or not Vance Joseph's the right guy, I don't think any of us know yet. But you know who doesn't go through periods like that, or who hasn't gone through periods like that in a long, long time? It was the team on the other sideline. And so we saw the Broncos in this rut where it just, I mean, look, I don't think anybody believes that this is any sort of like 5-year problem for the Broncos, but certainly they've got a lot of things to work out right now. After a very successful period, they were in the Super Bowl 2 of the last 4 years. And the Patriots don't go through that. There's one team that doesn't go through that. Okay, and I'm going to go through the list of the top 8 teams. This is the top quarter of the league since 2000 as far as wins go. The Steelers missed the playoffs in 2013 and 14. The Steelers struggled a little bit at the end of the Bill Cowher era before winning a Super Bowl in 2005. The Colts are in a rut right now. They haven't been to the playoffs in a couple of years. When they lost Peyton Manning in 2010, the bottom fell out completely. And it looks like that's happening again with Andrew Luck sidelined. The Packers are probably as stable as anybody else, but they still have a 6-10 and a 4-12 mixed in there. The Ravens have been stable, but in and out, and it looks like they're in a rut now. The Seahawks, I mean, how bad was that operation when Pete Carroll took over? They had a one and done in there. Jim Mora was the head coach for 1 year. So the point is, if you look at the Patriots' 18-year run behind Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, what you see is you see every other stable organization going through, at minimum, one rough patch, and most of them went through more than that. And some of them bottomed out completely. And what we saw on Sunday night was such a good example of what the Patriots have been able to do over this period. Because at the beginning of the year, their defense was a mess. Their offense looked like it lacked an identity after losing Julian Edelman. And somehow, on the fly, they figured the whole thing out. And so what we saw on Sunday night, I think, was another example of just how good they are. Number 3, I'm going to give credit to the Seahawks here. Richard Sherman's down. I think they're going to be okay. They found a way to fight through and win that game on Thursday night. They beat the Cardinals by 6, 22-16. Game was never really out of hand. They had control throughout. And I think right now we're looking at a team that's learning to win different ways. And I think it was very apparent the way they won that game against the Texans. That's probably not a game they'd win 3 or 4 years ago. So I think what's impressive about the Seahawks now, and why I think they're a team to watch going forward, and why I'm really interested to see how they play against the Falcons next Monday night, against a team that's run by one of their guys, Dan Quinn. There's been attrition there, and we've all talked about the age of the Seahawks defense and how the Bobby Wagners and the KJ Wrights and the Cliff Averils and the Michael Bennett's and the Richard Shermans and the Earl Thomases and the Cam Chancellors are getting a little older. But I think what we're seeing now is their ability to evolve, which bodes well for the chance that they have if they can find a way to hold on to John Schneider and Pete Carroll and keep those guys in place. The chance that they have to continue evolving and remain where they've been over the course of the last 5 years, which, if you look, they've not only made the playoffs in each of the last 5 seasons, they've also advanced around in each of the last 5 seasons. And so I think losing Richard Sherman's a blow, but I also know they won a playoff game last year without Earl Thomas. And they've shown a certain resilience, which I think speaks really well of John Schneider, the job that he's done putting the roster together and the program that Pete Carroll's been able to build. Number 4, the Cowboys missed Zeke Elliott. There is no doubt about it. And you can go back to what I wrote a couple weeks ago and what they would miss with Zeke. And this is such a subtle thing, but I think it's an important one. He's the most efficient runner in the NFL. The Cowboys were in 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 2 and 3rd and 3 a lot with Zeke Elliott out there. And that changes everything. You can't rush Dak Prescott the same way if that's the case. Your whole defensive operation's off balance. And so what do we see on Sunday when the Cowboys went to Atlanta? Check this stat out. 16 of the Cowboys' first 17 second downs were 2nd and 8 or longer. That changes everything. Okay? And that is as much on Alfred Morris and Rod Smith and Darren McFadden and the running backs as it is on the offensive line. That's not saying they're not good players. But there is something you lose when you lose a runner like Zeke, who is a special running back. And look, the Cowboys' identities run through that offensive line, and not having Tyron Smith out there was tough for them. And Chaz Green did not do well against Adrian Claiborne, who had 6 sacks. But Chaz Green's in a much better position out there, and they've played without Tyron Smith over the last couple of years. Chaz Green's in a much better position out there if he's in 2nd and 5 rather than 2nd and 9. And so I think that the Cowboys really missed Zeke Elliott on Sunday, and it's something we need to continue to watch. All right, number 5. And this is before I get to your questions on Periscope. Want to talk to you guys, and there are a lot of teams out there that are facing the prospect of making a coaching change after the year, right? And we can run right down the list if you want. And I'm going to pull up the standings now. You'd have to say the Giants are on that list, the Browns are on that list, the Colts are on that list, the Texans could make a change. The Bears are on that list. The Bucs are on that list. The Cardinals, Bruce Arians very easily could walk away. So there's a large number of teams that could make changes. All right. I want to point out a mistake that's being made over and over and over again. Look at Dirk Cutter in Tampa. Look at Ben McAdoo in New York. Those hires were made to placate quarterbacks. Those hires were made because we need to make sure that the environment is good for the most important player on our roster, which is the guy who's taking snaps. And the intention there is good. It really is. The intention there is great. Take care of the quarterback. The NFL has a way of overvaluing that. And I think it's abundantly clear if you look back at the last 4 Super Bowls. Okay? Now, we all know that you win the press conference when you bring in the slick offensive mind who has experience with quarterbacks, who's going to get your quarterback right or help you draft and develop a quarterback. We know that's the case, right? We know that you're going to win on the back page of the tabloid the next day. Are you going to win on Sunday, though? Well, check this out. Last 4 Super Bowls. Of the 8 teams that have made it, 7 of the 8 coaches have defensive background. Bill Belichick twice, Pete Carroll twice, Ron Rivera, Dan Quinn, John Fox. Gary Kubiak was the one outlier, and he was considered a retread when he was hired. Okay? We'll take that to another level. 4 of the last 5 Super Bowls were won by head coaches with defensive background, and 10 of the last 16 were won by coaches with defensive background. So that leaves 6, right? 2 of those 6 were won by Tom Coughlin, who was an offensive coach but never a coordinator, and never a quarterback's coach. So that leaves 4. McCarthy, Peyton, John Gruden, Kubiak. When you're looking at coaches, look at how they lead, okay? Doug Peterson and Jay Gruden are a great example of it. Those guys were good coordinators, but no one saw those guys as game changers. And you know what? Those guys are both better head coaches than they were coordinators. Why? Because they can lead. They can get guys to play for them. You can delegate everything else. The one thing you can't delegate is an ability to lead. The one thing you can't delegate is when things go sideways is the ability to straighten that out. With a bunch of strong-willed 23, 24, 25, 26-year-olds in the most macho environment you can possibly imagine. You need somebody who can lead. And so that's why I think a lot of these teams would be smart to look at the college level. Look at Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern. Look at David Shaw at Stanford. I mean, hell, call Nick Saban. See if he's interested. Look at guys who have experience leading programs. That's the most important thing in hiring a coach. Not whether or not the guy can call a play, not whether or not the guy can develop a quarterback. You can delegate that stuff. Pete Carroll, whose entire background is on defense, found a way to develop Russell Wilson. Bill Belichick, whose entire background is on defense, he found a way to develop Tom Brady. Ron Rivera, he was a linebacker in the pros. His entire background is on defense. Developed Cam Newton. You can delegate that stuff. You need somebody in the building who can do that, who can develop the quarterback, who can call offensive. You do need that. It just doesn't need to be from the head coach. All right, we're live back on Periscope now. I think that this is going to go up on Twitter. I'm going to make sure real quick. We actually recorded our podcast, so everybody joining in now. Yeah, there we are. All right, so everybody joining in now, and I see the number rising. We actually went through the 5 things, so I'm sorry for everybody who missed it, who wanted to see it. You can check that out on YouTube. You can check that out on iTunes. It's going to go up. And again, we're going to try to do this that way. But the 5 things that I hit on, so you know, Jerry versus the NFL is not about Zeke. It's not about the anthem. It's about power. Number 2, the Patriots organization showed its might on Sunday night, and not because Tom Brady had a 125 pass rate, not because he hit 9 different receivers, not because the defense was a lot better than it was early in the year, not even because the special teams blocked a punt, recovered a fumble, and returned a kick for a touchdown. It's because of what was on the other sideline. The fact that the Broncos weren't close to the Patriots, and that's a proud organization that's going through a dip, showed everything you need to know about who the Patriots are, because they don't go through those sorts of dips. Number 3, we talked about the Seahawks and how they've handled attrition and why I think there's proof out there that they're going to be just fine without Richard Sherman, as great a player as he is. And number 4, the Cowboys miss Zeke. I gave you guys proof on it. Second down is the reason why. They were in 2nd and 8 or longer on 16 of their first 17 second downs. And number 5, I explained to you why one of the great fallacies when it comes to hiring a head coach in the NFL is that you need to find an offensive wizard who knows how to develop quarterbacks. So I'm going to answer all of your questions here. Feel free to jump on any of that I just said. I will be happy to answer all of your questions here. Again, if you want to hear more of what I said earlier on, because I f***ed up the Periscope, feel free to check that out on YouTube later today or on iTunes. And we will answer all of your questions right now. Do you think the Ravens will improve as they get healthier, particularly the offense? The offensive line needs to be a lot better. Eagles, what's your opinion? Here's what's great about the Eagles. They're built through their offensive and defensive lines, and that'll continue to be the case as long as they can manage the loss of Jason Peters with Big V. The defensive line looks great. The offensive line's been great. They figure to get a lot better at corner. They're going to get Ronald Darby back. They might get Sidney Jones back. Sidney Jones was the number 2 corner in the draft class behind only Marshawn Lattimore before he had the Achilles injury. So if they get 90% of Sidney Jones back and Ronald Darby back, now all of a sudden you take maybe the biggest hole they had on their roster and you shore that up. The Eagles are in great shape going in to the second half of their season. More questions. Let's go. Answer all your questions here. What team is a fraud? I'll have to look through the standings to see that. Steelers, a Super Bowl team. I think the Steelers are potentially a Super Bowl team. I'd put them behind only New England in the AFC right now. The reason why, look, the offense hasn't looked great, right? So the offensive line has some issues. We've had the drama with Martavius Bryant, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell, and Ben Roethlisberger. If they get things straight on offense, you know what? Their defense is a lot better. Their defense won that game against the Colts on Sunday, and they've got so much talent offensively. And it's not like Brown and Bell aren't having great years. And so if they can find a way to just get where they normally are on offense, they don't need to be better than they've been in the past, then the defense looks like it's going to give Mike Tomlin his most well-rounded team since 2010. 2 teams from the AFC South making the playoffs. Potentially the Jaguars and Titans are both very much in the race. I don't think there's going to be another team out of the AFC East. The AFC West doesn't look as strong as it's been. And who's the second team coming out of the North? Maybe the Ravens if they recover or if they rebound. Will the Eagles win a Super Bowl with Wentz? I think they eventually will. Shanahan, a leader or a quarterback's kind of coach. We will see. He clearly can coach quarterbacks. He's gotten the most out of Matt Schaub. He got a great year out of Robert Griffin in Washington. He's done fantastic work, or did fantastic work in Atlanta with Matt Ryan. So I have full confidence he'll be able to get a lot out of Jimmy Garoppolo when Garoppolo gets in the lineup. The leadership part of it is something we still have to learn. We don't know about that until we see guys actually in the role. Sean McVay is a good example of a guy who's been lights out in that area early on. Thoughts on Stephon Gilmore's performance on Sunday night? A lot better. And I think the Patriots coaches are learning how to use him. But to do what he did to Demaryius Thomas, fantastic. Outlook for the Saints and the Vikings. I think what the Saints have done is sustainable. Here's why. If you're a team with a franchise quarterback like that, and this goes for even Tom Brady Patriots, the Peyton Manning Colts, you want to be in a situation where if your guy throws for 150 yards, you can still win the game. For a long time, the Saints haven't been in that position, but now with the running game they've built and with the defense that they have, with the running game they've built and the defense that they've put together, they have a chance to be that sort of team. They've been that sort of team so far this year, and it's all about that rookie class. Those first 4 picks have been dynamite for the Saints, and I'm talking about Marshawn Lattimore, who's a top 5 corner already, Marcus Williams, who's playing 100% of the snaps at free safety, Ryan Ramczyk, who's been a godsend as they've had to manage the losses of Teron Armstead and Zach Strief, and then Alvin Kamara, who's been the exact type of slash weapon that Sean Payton covets. I'll be crossing my fingers for you and the Browns, buddy. I don't know why you're crossing your fingers for me and the Browns. I'm not from Ohio. Malcolm Mitchell update. That's touch and go. How do the Pats keep winning with making bad picks? Number 12 is a huge part of it. Pagano and Hugh getting fired. I think there's a chance that both Indianapolis and Cleveland are open at the end of the year. Will the Pats keep Butler long term? I don't think they'll be able to find a way to do that because the floor for Butler right now would be what Stephon Gilmore got at $13 million a year. Keep them coming, guys. See, now we have 220. If I had just hit this the right way the first time, we would have been okay. Is Solomon Thomas a bust? It was 9 games into his career. Settle down. Butler is a waste of a big contract, in my opinion. I don't think he would be. I think Butler's been a huge piece of who the Patriots are defensively. Yeah, Sanders got him a couple times on Sunday night. Doesn't mean he's not a good player. Will the Bears fire Fox this season? I think that is certainly in play. How would you build the Redskins if the Redskins re-sign Cousins? I think the Redskins are in good shape from a roster standpoint. Their defense has gotten a lot better. They've hit on a bunch of their picks. Look, I think Jonathan Allen's going to wind up being a really good player for him, a cornerstone type of player. Josh Norman's played well for them. Offensively, I think there are a lot of pieces in place. The offensive line's in really good shape. I think they should do what they need to do to keep Cousins. That's my opinion. Where do you see Josh Rosen going? I think Josh Rosen's going to be a top 5 pick. Keep it coming, guys. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. I got something from my buddy Mike Garafolo here, too. Oh, I guess when I tweeted the Periscope, I tweeted the letter L, so that was good by me. I guess my technical issues aren't over. What do you think about the Eagles' defense? Are they for real? Again, I think their defensive front is for real. I think what they've done over the course of the last couple of years and putting that group together, and they had coming into this offseason Fletcher Cox and Vinnie Curry and Brandon Graham, and now to add Timmy Jernigan and to add Derek Barnett and Chris Long to that group, they've done really well to put the front together. The linebackers are good enough. What's going to be interesting is seeing where the corner position goes from here with the possibility they get Darby and, again, Sidney Jones back. Your pick for the 2017 draft bus is too early for that. Besides Pittsburgh, who's the biggest challenger to the Pats in the AFC? It might actually be Jacksonville. Are the Rams unstoppable? Unstoppable is a little strong, but they're definitely headed in the right direction. I don't think that this is going to be – I don't know that they'll be playing on championship weekend. I'll put it that way, but I could certainly see them advancing around in the playoffs, and they're certainly on the right track. Do the Lions have a chance to catch the Vikings? Yes, they do. You know why? Because their quarterback situation is better than any quarterback situation in that division, and they added a big piece on Sunday, bringing Taylor Decker back to the lineup. They believe he can be an elite left tackle, and that makes all the offensive line work they did in the offseason come together because they brought in Ricky Wagner, who's strictly a right tackle. They brought in T.J. Lang. They felt like they upgraded 2 positions there. The problem was that the guys they brought in didn't have the flexibility to play left tackle. Now the left tackle position, where they've started, I think, 3 or 4 different guys, or at least played 3 or 4 different guys, is taken care of. How great would a Brady Brees Super Bowl be? It would be fantastic. I wish we got to see Brady Rodgers. I hope we get to see Brady Rodgers at some point. Does Dallas win without Zeke? Again, I think the biggest issue they have losing Zeke is his efficiency as a runner. This is a guy who would be almost automatic to give you 2nd and 6 when you gave him the ball. On Sunday, we've mentioned a couple times here, against Atlanta, 16 of their first 17 second downs were 2nd and 8 or longer. All right, let's do 10 more questions. Let's do 10 more questions. I'll do them rapid fire. Fire away. 10 more questions. Will John Gruden ever be an NFL head coach again? I'm going to say yes, but I don't think that that's any sure thing. I think that's 50-50. 2, your NFC Super Bowl representative today would be, who did I say? The Seattle Seahawks. That's who I said last week, so I'm going to stick with it even though Sherman's hurt. Browns next year, 10-6, book it. Number 3, I'm going to say that's a little rich. Keep an eye on Peyton Manning going there. Number 4, Big Ben and his brain freeze. We'll see whether or not he can play a little bit better. I think the offensive line hasn't been as good as they've expected it to be with Villanueva and DeCastro and Pouncey. They should be better. So that's the primary area where they need to improve. Will the Raiders make the playoffs? That's question number 5. No. Question number 6, prediction on how the Jaguars season ends. I think they wind up, let's say 10-6. I think they finish 4-3 in their last 7 games. And I think the foundation is there for them to go and pursue a veteran quarterback. I think that's a very attractive landing spot for a veteran quarterback. Now, why? It's exactly what I said about the Saints. That's a place a quarterback can go and have games where he throws for 150 or 200 yards and still win. They're building it through the line of scrimmage, which is something I'm a big believer in. They can run the ball certainly with Leonard Fournette, and that's going to be a quality that they should have for the next few years. And the defense looks absolutely outstanding. Number 7, I like Bruce Arians in Cleveland. I don't think Bruce Arians is going to Cleveland. I think if Bruce Arians walks away from Arizona, he's going to his lake house in Georgia. I think it's over for him if he does decide to retire from Arizona, which a lot of people in the NFL believe is going to happen. Number 8, Pats draft a quarterback this year. I think one of the interesting things, if you look at the situation with Brian Hoyer, they signed him to a 3-year deal. What does that do? Well, that gives you at least some flexibility going forward where they don't have to overextend for a veteran quarterback and they don't have to push a draft pick where maybe they might not be comfortable with a quarterback class overall. That's the biggest piece of flexibility that they have, and it's a great piece of flexibility to use because, as we all know, there aren't 5 or 6 great quarterbacks every year. Question number 9, Eli in New York next year. I believe Eli will be in New York next year. I think there's a possibility that he has Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold or Josh Allen or someone like that with him. Eli has a desire to finish his career in New York. I believe that's genuine. I believe he puts value in the idea of being a career Giant and what it could mean for him post-career. So I think that Eli Manning remains a Giant in 2018, but he might have some company. Last question, question number 10. Let's go. See, every time I ask for a question, it takes a second. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. One more question. Who's got it? See, I got a thank you there, so maybe people are telling me to go away. Now there's a bunch of statements. Wentz MVP, Marvin Lewis getting fired, Cowboys flop. Those aren't questions, guys. Give me a question. Someone? Anyone? There's still 125 of you here. Are the Giants tanking? That's question number 10. The answer to that question is absolutely not. If you're Ben McAdoo or Jerry Reese, why in the hell would you tank? Your job's on the line. You have to show that you've got control of your locker room. You've got to show that the roster's well put together. They're not in any position to tank. That makes 0 sense. So, no, the Giants are not tanking. We've been over this a lot. I do feel like Ben McAdoo has lost control of that team. I do feel like that goes back to Odell Beckham and the way that they handled him in January and the way they handled him in April and May. But why in the hell would Ben McAdoo or Jerry Reese be a party to a tanking at this point? It makes sense for the franchise to be in a position to draft a Rosen or a Darnold or an Allen, right? That makes sense, or maybe Baker Mayfield. It makes sense for the franchise. But for the individual guys who are pulling the trigger on everything that they do, it makes 0 sense at all. I appreciate you guys coming out. I want to get feedback from you. I wish we did this the right way, but I messed up the technical part of it again. So I promise I'll do better in that area next week. We will have the entire podcast. This isn't any sort of ploy to get you to listen on iTunes or get you to watch on YouTube. I'm not playing games with you. It was absolutely a mistake on my part because I am not good with iPhones, iPads, my laptop. So we will get that settled. That's the bottom line. We will get that fixed for next week. So the entire YouTube podcast will be on Periscope next week. We want to give you guys every which way to watch this, to consume this, whatever way you're most comfortable with, whatever way is easiest for you. I appreciate all your feedback. Go like my Facebook page at Albert R. Breer. Go to my Twitter page at Albert Breer. You guys can give me feedback in both of those spots. Tell me what you like that we're doing, what you don't like that we're doing. Again, this is about giving you guys the most outlets to get at me, get my reactions from the weekend, and interact with me a little bit on the back end. As always, listen to and subscribe to the MMQB podcast with Peter King, the MMQB 10 Things podcast, and one more time this podcast, the MMQB podcast with Albert Breer, both the Friday morning edition, which I do with Andy Gresh, and this edition, which goes up on Tuesdays on YouTube and iTunes. And you can get us wherever you get your podcasts. I said iTunes. You can also get us on Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, all those places. Same time next week. Be there. We'll see you then.